Colton, USMC, retired, becoming a very dangerous man. 35 miles north of Portland, Oregon, is the small city of St. Helens. In times lost to memory, it had been a bustling lumber town. Located on the western shore of the mighty Columbia River, the city was ideally suited for a lumber shipping port serving the vast Pacific Rim. Now it was but a husk of its former self. Its port was in shambles, and the cranes and other machinery were rusting away. Even its harbor was now filled with silt. All of this was thanks to some mythical, endangered creature called a spotted owl. Smug city folks strutted around, patting one another on the back, proud to have saved an endangered species. Later it was found to be a common species, but the damage had already been done, and St. Helens never recovered. The few people who lived there now were not generally friendly. They were deeply suspicious of anyone from the big city to the south. Are they here to finish destroying the town in an effort to save yet another fictitious creature? In the depths of poverty, St. Helens had become a haven for drug dealers, sex traffickers, and outlaw bikers. Deep in the woods, west of the city, was the Kingman Motorcycle Club's clubhouse, the Hideout. A notorious outlaw biker gang, the Kingmen were legendary for their brutal intolerance of outsiders. This is precisely why Captain Michael Colton found himself there. 6 months earlier, his wife Linda and their unborn son had been slaughtered by a vile Portland street gang, the 129th Street Eastsiders, who thought themselves invincible. When they left Colton barely clinging to life, they had made a serious miscalculation. Realizing that mistake, the gang's leader sent an assassin to Colton's hospital room in Hood River, Oregon, to finish the job. That assassin was met by an unstoppable force by the name of Sergeant Cletus Renfro. The giant black man was a long-time associate of Colton's. Numerous combat tours together had made the pair loyal friends. Colton slowly recovered in the Hood River Memorial Hospital, but after his wife and unborn child's death, the accomplished Marine warfighter with years of combat experience found himself left with only one reason to live: revenge. With Cletus and 2 other Marine friends, Colton utterly destroyed the 129th Street Eastsiders, whose leadership occupied a high seat in Portland's government. Once that mission was accomplished, Colton again found himself adrift in a sea of self-loathing. He blamed himself for the deaths of his family. He should have been there to save them. When he got out of bed each morning, he longed for a nice, soothing hot bath with a toaster. He spent his days secluded in his hotel room, wallowing in self-pity, a bottle of tequila not far from his grasp. His evenings were spent looking for whatever trouble he could find that might end his suffering. Death seemed like his only release. For this reason, Michael Colton found himself sitting in his van during a downpour, across the muddy parking lot from the Kingman Motorcycle Club's hideout. Perhaps a dozen Harleys sat in the muddy lot looking forlorn in the driving rain. Illuminated by the occasional lightning bolt and rattled by the near-instantaneous thunderclap, the place looked like every other sleazy, rat-infested biker bar he'd been in. Virtually no paint, a tumble-down entry portcullis, and a collapsed shed on one side. Even the sign proclaiming Kingman Hideout seemed ready to fall at any moment. The only thing that looked secure was a large 5-foot square sign next to the door. It sported large red letters on a white background and proclaimed, "Strangers not welcome. Keep out." It was easily big enough to be seen across the parking lot. Colton pulled his Glock 23 .40 caliber pistol from behind his back and put it in the glove box. He pulled a Glock 43X 9mm from an ankle holster and put it beside the 23. He took his K-bar fighting knife off his side and stowed it with the pistols. He locked the glove box, opened his door, and stepped out into the rain. The enigmatic smile on his face seemed to be saying, maybe this is the night it all ends. He opened a rickety door and walked into a gloomy, smoke-filled bar. A cursory examination of the room revealed several people in the rear and several more near some pool tables. None were close, so he sat at the counter and whistled for the barmaid. Colton reacted instinctively when she emerged from the gloom into the feeble lights over the bar. "Yikes," he said under his breath. Apparently she heard him and said,
"You never seen a woman before, dickhead?"
She had bright green spiky hair and a plump red splotchy face that reminded him of a freshly slapped ass. She wore heavy black eyeliner and her eyelids were shaded to match her hair. The whole effect reminded him of some kind of gay raccoon. Her lipstick matched her hair. He found himself wondering if she'd just escaped some carnival sideshow. He wondered if the makeup was applied with a gardener's trowel or a paint roller, and the sickly sweet smell of cheap perfume made his eyes water. "Woman," said Colton, "sure I have, just none of your caliber." When she next spoke, he noticed her tongue was split like a serpent's. She said,
"Do you have some kind of death wish, asshole?"
"Yes," he answered. He paused, then said, "Don Julio Blanco tequila and a Miller, please." He laid a 20 on the bar. She glared at him momentarily, then picked up the money and waddled away to get his drinks. He shook his head. "There's not enough tequila in this joint to get me on that carnival ride," he thought.
"You better drink up and get your ass out of here before the boys throw you out in pieces."
"Looking forward to it, buddy," he said. "That's why I came here." She shook her head, turned, and shuffled away. Colton drank his tequila shot and followed it with a drink of his beer. He noticed the growing stench of an unwashed body. He turned on his bar stool to see a biker standing 4 feet away. His clothes were filthy, and his black beard and long hair were tangled and matted. He looked to be about 6 feet tall, but it was hard to be precise in the faint light. He was heavily built, and even in the gloom of the smoky room, Colton could see the outright hatred painted on his pinched face.
"You too stupid to read the sign out front, shithead. We don't like strangers here."
He had a deep voice, Darth Vader deep. "Damn it," said Colton. "I thought that sign was an invitation to come in and play."
"Oh, you want to play?"
"I do," said Colton. He looked the guy up and down, then said, "You the tough guy here?"
"Yeah, but you need to earn a shot at me. I don't waste my time on amateurs."
He looked behind him and hollered,
"Blue, get your ass up here."
Out of the darkness behind him walked a man-mountain. A light-skinned black man. Blue was about 6 feet 8 inches tall and every bit of 350 pounds. He was barrel-chested with tree stumps for legs. His hands looked like 2 outsized catcher's mitts, and his arms were easily as big as most men's legs. He had a small, bald head with a long black beard. His face seemed utterly devoid of intelligence, and his eyes reflected red in the light from the bar. Colton pushed away from the bar and stood.
"Beat his ass, Blue."
The big man stepped into a straight right that landed flush on his chin. It drove him to his knees. Colton spun to his right and powered the heel of his heavy combat boot onto the brute's temple. Blue fell to his side, lay still, and drew slobbery, ragged breaths. "Next," said Colton.
"That was pure luck, dumbass."
"If you say so, pussnuts."
"I do."
He turned and yelled.
"Roger, Billy, get up here."
2 men strode into the light, built like middleweights. Both wore biker jackets and club cuts. They looked like they could be twins. Each was 5 foot 11 inches and around 170 pounds, with long blonde hair and matching beards. Handles, Colton called them. He liked handles. How do you tell them apart? By smell?
"Hurt 'em, boys."
One guy stepped forward while pulling his coat back to take it off. Colton drove his right foot up under the man's chin, snapping his head back. The biker fell over, flat on his back, arms locked and reaching for the sky. His partner yelled,
"That wasn't fair."
"If you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics suck," Colton told him. He stepped forward and drove a vicious left-right-left combination into the center of the guy's face. The man stood, weaving in place, eyes glazed. Colton spun on his right leg and drove his left heel into the side of the man's face. The guy hit the floor hard like a sack of dried cement. Colton walked over and looked into the first biker's face from 6 inches away. He said, "You got any better soldiers back there? This bunch was pretty pathetic."
"Angus?"
the biker called out. A medium-sized man walked up. He displayed none of the stupid the earlier man exuded. He stared at Colton with cold blue eyes. He squatted down, spun, and swept Colton's legs from under him. The Marine rolled over his right shoulder, leapt to his feet, and spun a right-foot helicopter kick at the man. Angus blocked the boot with his forearm, but it drove him back. Colton switched direction and threw a quick left-foot helicopter kick at the man's head. Caught off guard, Angus took the boot flush on the side of his face. He went down and lay still.
Well, aren't you the talented asshole?
Said the original smelly biker. You gonna bore me to death, or are we gonna play? The biker threw a quick right fist. Colton brushed it aside, and as the man leaned past him, encircled his neck in a textbook Marine chokehold. He took the man to the floor on his face and cut off his air supply. He watched the man's ears go from a healthy pink to a sickly shade of gray. After 2 minutes, he let go and stood. Colton turned to see the barmaid pointing a 12-gauge shotgun at him. She racked the weapon as Colton walked up to her. She aimed it at his face and said,
"Don't move, asshole."
Colton pressed forward until the muzzle rested against his forehead. "Pull the trigger."
You're crazy.
Yeah, lots of people say that.
Get out.
She screamed. "Pull the trigger, you freak." She shrank back, lowering the weapon.
Damn lunatic.
That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all day, buddy. He grabbed the shotgun barrel and jerked it from the barmaid's hands. He racked the slide 7 times until the last shot shell clattered to the floor. He held the barrel and swung the shotgun down on the edge of the bar. It split in 2. He looked at the bar thing and said, "Bye now." He left the bar, got in his van, and turned for home. Life in a motel was chaotic at best. He had barely fallen asleep when a car drove up outside. He glanced at the clock. It was a little after midnight. He rolled to his side, hoping sleep would return. He was wrong. Whoever was driving the car went to the room next to Colton's and began beating on the door.
"Let me in, Sylvia."
Go away, Roger.
A crash resonated in his room as Roger Sanchez smashed through the door. Sylvia screamed. Colton could hear the man slapping her as she begged him to stop. When a child started crying, Colton stood, got dressed, and entered the room next to his. Roger had Sylvia by the throat and was strangling her. A small child was beating on his back. He turned and kicked the girl to the floor. That's when he saw Colton.
"Get out, this ain't none of your business, puto."
Roger was around 5 feet 9 inches tall. His acne-scarred face looked like it had seen many hours of testing meat tenderizers. He glared at Colton through dull brown eyes. "I'm making it my business," said Colton.
"You better leave now, gringo, before I hurt you."
"You know, before I saw you kick that child, I might have just let you walk out of here. But any coward who can abuse a child like that doesn't deserve any sympathy from me, so I'm gonna hurt you some before you leave." Roger released Sylvia and turned to Colton. He reached behind his back, pulled a stiletto, and held it up for Colton to see. Long and thin, it had a sharply pointed tip.
"You can live to see another day if you leave now, gringo."
Colton laughed, then said, "I don't give a shit, asshole. I've been dead for a long time now." Roger lunged, his blade thrust out in front. It passed 2 inches to the right of Colton's throat. He turned on his right leg and drove his right elbow into the back of Roger's head as he passed. The brute hit the ground hard, knife skittering across the floor to stop against the far wall. Colton walked over and picked up the stiletto. He tossed it back to Roger and said, "You better hang on to this, punk. You're going to need it."
"You're loco, gringo."
"That's a fact, Jack," said Colton. "Now get the hell up and let's finish this. I got shit to do." Roger snatched the knife, leapt up, and charged Colton again. He didn't learn from his earlier mistake. Poor tactics seemed to feed on themselves in this guy. Colton turned his back to Roger. He squatted and let the man's blade pass over his right shoulder. He grabbed his assailant's wrist and turned it so the palm faced upward. He moved so the man's elbow directly rested on his shoulder. He pulled down hard, flexing the elbow 90 degrees in the opposite direction that it was meant to bend. Roger screamed, a guttural, agonized scream. Colton pushed him away. The man stood in front of him, his arm hanging at a grotesque angle. Colton smiled, then said, "If you ever bother Sylvia again, I'll kill you. Are we clear?"
Yes, sir,
said Roger. "Now get your ass to a hospital." When the man was gone, Sylvia said,
Thank you, mister.
"The asshole woke me up. I don't like that. And I don't like people who hurt women and children." Colton smiled at the child. She smiled back, a twinkle in her eyes. Colton stood for a moment, then turned and walked out the door into a dark, stormy night. He hopped in his van and headed up to Hood River to the east. With little chance of sleeping, he decided to drive the 60 miles and visit his wife's grave. It was around 2 a.m. when Colton turned into Hood River Cemetery, where Linda was buried. Her white marble tombstone glittered in the feeble moonlight. She rested in a pair of graves, side by side, one reserved for Colton when the time came. The tombstone was wide enough for 2 graves. On one side was her name, Lieutenant Linda Collins Colton, USN, followed by her date of birth and death. On the other side was Colton's name, date of birth, and the USMC globe and anchor, which were carved into the stone. No death date was listed as of yet, but Colton hoped to remedy that in the very near future. Without her and their unborn child, Colton struggled to find a reason to go on. His life had no purpose. His days were filled with misery, and he spent his nights taking insane chances in the hopes of finding release. Gangbanger clubhouses and biker bars were his haunts, but he struggled to find anyone capable of ending his misery. The Marines had trained him well. For some reason, Colton couldn't get the vision of Sylvia's child out of his mind. Her smile and the twinkle in her eyes touched him in a way very little had in recent times. He sat on Linda's grave, his back to the tombstone. In the distance, the lights on the church bravely tried to fight off the night. However little, if any, of their comforting glow made it out to Colton. What little light did make it to him danced in the tree branches and fought against the onslaught of raindrops. The driving rain pelted his face and a brisk wind chilled the air. Lost in thought, he was oblivious to all this. He raised a half-empty gallon of Don Julio Blanco tequila to his lips and took a long pull. If the fiery liquid burned his throat, he didn't notice. He caressed the Glock in his right hand. He knew it was just a tool, but saw it as his only friend on this dreary night. The first day he met Linda was not a day he was proud of. She was a psychiatrist in the San Diego Naval Hospital. She was young, black, and newly assigned to his case. He'd treated her badly, doing his best to drive her away. The same as he had done with the nearly dozen doctors who had preceded her. But she was tenacious. She weathered his temper tantrums, endured his hateful comments and racial slurs, showing up each morning full of happiness. He'd hated her viscerally at first. Perhaps it was because she was blessed with so much joy. Her good mood damaged his carefully constructed facade of self-loathing. That's why he hated her so much. Who the hell was she to try and save the hollow Marine? He was none of her damned business. Happiness and joy were foreign concepts to him after he'd accidentally killed a classroom full of young children in the Gulf War. While the Marine Corps cleared him of any responsibility in the incident, Captain Colton was not so generous. He played the incident over and over in his mind every day. It was a hot summer morning in August. Captain Colton, a 21-year-old farm boy from eastern Oregon, was leading his first mission as command officer in Iraq. Colton's platoon was sent to the ancient city of Najaf along the Euphrates River in south-central Iraq. His outfit, the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, was on joint operations with the Army's 1st, 5th, and 7th Cavalry Divisions. The Army units were hunting elements of al-Sadr's Mahdi Army. While the other Marine units were assisting the Army, Colton's platoon's primary mission was hunting a local warlord named Al-Qawi, a well-known al-Qaeda sympathizer. It was thought his headquarters were in a mosque somewhere in Colton's AO. He was a particularly nasty Islamic terrorist. In recent weeks, the warlord was filmed personally executing 2 Marines by beheading them. Later, he published a video of the killings on the internet to taunt the Americans who were forbidden to kill him on orders from the political powers back in the States, orders from men who knew nothing of war, yet profited from it. By 0730, Colton's team reached their area of operations. Despite the relatively early hour, the sun hung high up in a clear sky and beat down mercilessly. The temperature rapidly soared past the century mark. Colton deployed his men around a small square in a defilade facing toward the cemetery. His orders were to hold that position and cut off Al-Qawi's escape route to the south, but not to take part in the actual assault. He glassed the cemetery carefully. After a thorough survey, it was clear to Colton that some of al-Sadr's Mahdi army forces were dug in there. He saw 2 T-74s hull down on the opposite side of the graveyard. He radioed the MEU command and reported what he saw. MEU told him that they figured Al-Qawi was with them. He was to hold his position. At 0900, 7 M1A1 Abrams tanks of the 2nd Battalion, 37th Armor, entered the cemetery and immediately encountered heavy resistance. The Booger Eaters had 3-man rocket-propelled grenade teams set up in the cemetery, dug into the tombs. An RPG won't destroy an Abrams, but it could disable one if it hit it in the right place. And for ground pounders, an RPG would mess up their whole day if they found themselves on the wrong side of one. Colton's platoon could hear the battle off to the north all morning. It was intense, but it was quiet around his platoon. Basically, the men were bored out of their damn minds. Around 1400 hours, a 6-man squad of Booger Eaters ran into the square. When they spotted the Marines, they began firing with AK-47s, but the platoon had them in the defilade and quickly neutralized them. After that brief encounter, the AO was eerily quiet for the next 2 hours. At 1600 hours, headquarters called for a sitrep. Colton was talking on the platoon radio when a shot rang out and the captain's radio man, Corporal Ashton Waverly, fell to the ground, headshot. The next shot hit Colton's body armor and he went down. He quickly ducked behind a concrete barricade and signaled his men that he was okay. He pointed toward the mosque, pressed his throat mic and said, "Take that bastard out." He could see a Booger Eater with a scoped rifle on the walkway, a sniper. More shots quickly followed, and Corporal Sammy Day fell to the ground, dead. Another flurry of shots and Private Jose Martinez fell, his M4 firing into the sky. Another shot hit Private David Waters. Waters wasn't dead but severely wounded. He lay there in an open area, screaming. Captain Colton yelled for his platoon to target the sniper with suppressing fire. They all started firing at the mosque. Other Booger Eaters popped up along the wall, maybe 5. Colton ran out to Private Waters. Bullets raced by all around him. Dust and stone chips clouded the air, but all the bullets missed him somehow. Colton pulled Waters to safety behind a barricade, then yelled for Doc Miller, the Navy corpsman, cutting across open ground. Doc was killed as he tried to get to them. Suddenly, the team started taking heavy machine gun fire from the front of the mosque. At least a dozen Booger Eaters were shooting at them, and 2 of them had heavier crew-served machine guns. In rapid succession, that sniper dropped 2 more men, Privates Roger Connors and Willie Powell. Colton crouched behind a barricade, trying to get a good look at the situation. Radio man Waverly had a small D-rocket strapped on his back. That's a shoulder-launched multi-purpose assault weapon, disposable in civilian lingo. Colton raced over amid the bullets and scooped it up as he ran past. Bullets impacted the wall behind him, but the Booger Eaters were all late on the trigger, their bullets impacting just behind him. His men were all firing at the front of the mosque, but weren't having any luck neutralizing the shooter. After 3 tries, Colton finally got around in the sniper and dropped him behind the wall. Colton put down 2 more Booger Eaters when they picked up the sniper rifle and tried to deploy it. Other members of the platoon killed 5 more before the insurgents faded away. Colton had lost 7 of his original 12-man platoon. In the distance, the platoon could hear faint wailing, but they couldn't leave their positions to investigate. The platoon cleared the mosque. 2 Blackhawks landed and took their casualties back to base. When the choppers were gone, the men noticed that the strident wailing had returned. About a half hour later, Units of the 7th Armor rolled in to relieve them. When Colton knew his platoon was secure and his casualties looked after, he took Sergeant Renfro and an army patrol to find the source of the wailing. Behind the mosque, there was a small mud-brick building. It was surrounded by wailing Muslim women. The Smaw D had blown through the wall and exploded inside. Colton and Cletus went to the door and entered a horrible scene. A blood-soaked Iraqi woman cradled a young child, or at least what was left of one, and screamed at the Marines. They couldn't understand her words, but her meaning was clear. Colton retreated out the door, fell to his knees and vomited. He sat back against a ruined wall and struggled to fight off the tears. He never even flinched when a woman ran out of the wreckage and began firing a small pistol at him. Cletus disarmed her and pushed her back inside the building. Within half an hour, 2 M1A1 Abrams rolled into the square, followed by several Humvees. A major dismounted a Humvee and strode up to Colton.
Captain Colton, I presume?
He never even looked up. "Yeah," was all Colton said.
What happened here, Captain? Did you fire a missile at the mosque?
"I can see how you mate, Major. Nothing gets by you." "Yeah," said Colton. Cletus looked at the Major and said,
"He's had a terrible shock, sir."
Colton continued as if he'd not heard Cletus. "I did, but just as I fired, I took a round in the helmet. It turned me, causing me to miss. That Smaw D. It hit this civilian building."
Casualties?
The Major asked, looking at the destruction. 16, plus their teacher,
Sweet Jesus,
said the Major. "What is the point of this war?" yelled Colton. "Tell me that, Major, to get more money for already rich bastards?" He threw his M4 into the dirt, stripped off his body armor and dropped it to the ground. He pulled his M92 Beretta, threw it into the dirt, and began walking toward the sounds of fighting in the cemetery. "Kill me," he screamed, waving his arms. "Kill me, you sons of bitches!" Several bullets snapped around him, but none found their mark.
get your Captain Sergeant?
Said the Major.
Let's get him back to base where the docs can get a look at him.
Sir,
said Cletus. Then went after Colton. He forced his friend back to the square to await the chopper. Once back in the States, Colton's life spun out of control. He was medically discharged from his beloved Marine Corps and found himself on a suicidal roller coaster ride, longing for an end. In a moment of lucidity, he checked himself into the San Diego Naval Hospital psych ward. Colton took a long pull on the tequila, then set it on the ground next to him. He took his Glock 23 and put the muzzle to his temple. He took up the slack in the trigger mechanism. "See you soon, my loves." A voice startled him.
Are you okay, Mr. Colton?
He looked up to see a tall, thin, white-haired man looking down at him. The man seemed ancient, like time itself. Even his clothes looked as if they belonged in another century. Far away to the east, over his right shoulder, a hint of color brightened the horizon. False dawn. The rain had stopped, and the wind had died down. Colton studied the man's craggy face, mostly concealed behind a flowing white beard. "Who the hell are you?" Colton snapped.
I'm Mezeran Sir Watkins. He said, I'm the church sextant.
"What the hell is a sextant?"
I tend to the grounds, mow the grass, pull the weeds, water the flowers, and generally keep this place presentable for visitors like you who come to see their loved ones.
"From what I see, you're doing an excellent job,"
Thank you.
said Watkins.
I also dig the graves, Mr. Colton.
"How do you know my name?"
You're famous around here, sir. Thanks to you and your friends, the world is a safer place to live these days.
Colton just nodded at him.
I wish you would put your gun away, Captain. I'm sure Linda and your son wouldn't want you to do what you are contemplating, and I know that your loss would greatly diminish the city.
Colton looked at the man for a moment, then took a long pull of tequila. He looked down at the Glock, then put it back in the holster in the small of his back. When he looked up, the man was gone. He contemplated what the old-timer had said and, at some point, must have fallen asleep, because it was a bright, clear morning when he opened his eyes again. The rain was gone, replaced by a beautiful azure sky. Steam rose off his clothes as the sun warmed them, driving out the moisture. Behind him, a voice said,
"Are you all right, sir?"
He turned to see a man in his late 50s dressed head to toe in black, the vestments of a priest in the church. "Yes, Father, I'm fine. I came to visit my wife. I met your sextant, Ezra Watkins. We talked for a while, and he helped me out of a dilemma."
"I'm Father Mark Parker, sir. What is your name?"
"Michael Colton,"
"Mr. Colton, we don't have a sextant.
said the priest.
All of our landscaping and maintenance is put out for bid every other year."
And then who the hell was I talking to?
"What did you say the name was, Mr. Colton?"
"Just Colton, Father. He said his name was Ezra Ansel Watkins."
"That's a name I have heard before, Colton. Come with me, son. We'll check the church burial records."
The church's burial records were in the process of being digitized and saved to a computer file. So far, the computer technician had only gotten to the late 1890s. A record search revealed no one named Ezra Ansel Watkins.
"We will need to search the earlier records by hand. They've not been digitized yet."
After a 10-minute search, the name Ezra Ansel Watkins came up. He was buried in the cemetery's oldest section from the late 1840s. The pair went out to the man's grave. A simple stone marker said, "Here lies Ezra Ansel Watkins, a man of low moral character." It listed his birth in 1807 and showed that he died in 1847, long before the city of Hood River was founded. It was just a settlement in those days, dominated by cattle ranches. 20 minutes later, the priest said,
"I've found a picture of him on the day he was hanged.
"Hanged?"
He killed someone."
The priest turned the computer screen to Colton and asked,
"Is this the man you talked to?"
A tall, thin, white-haired man looked into the camera. A long, flowing beard hung down his chest, his hands were shackled, and some stairs next to him led up to a gallows. "It's the guy."
"After his death, the church granted his wife an annulment since they were childless. Her family was from Sherman County, out east of the Dalles. She moved back home. The church records show that Marilee Markell remarried to a local farmer from Wasco named Micah Colton."
"You're shitting me, Father,"
"I assure you I am not."
said the priest.
"What did you say your name was?"
"Michael Colton, sir." Colton stared at him for a moment, then said, "Damn. My family has farmed around Wasco for many generations. Marilee Colton must be a distant relative."
"I don't believe in spirits and whatnot, Mr. Colton, but my wife does. She says that during times of desperation, a spirit will sometimes show itself and offer guidance. Were you going to hurt yourself, Mr. Colton?"
He looked at the floor for a long moment, then said, "I accidentally killed some children and their teacher in Iraq. After that, I found myself in the psych ward at the San Diego Naval Hospital. Dr. Linda Collins was a psychiatrist there. She pulled me back from the edge and showed me it was okay to be happy again. Within 6 months of my discharge, she became my wife. Then she was murdered by some vile creatures in Portland. Vengeance was my crutch at first, but once all the actors were gone, I lost purpose. Now I'm struggling to find a reason to go on. Yes, Father, I was at her grave to join her and my unborn son."
Why an outlaw with such a questionable connection to you would visit is up for speculation, but if he pulled you back from the edge, I'm glad he did.
"I was contemplating an end, yes, Father."
"Linda says you have much to do before it is your time."
Colton leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. What the absolute hell is going on? He fell to his side and hit his head on the empty tequila bottle. His eyes snapped open. It was still dark, yet the eastern sky showed early signs of the impending sunrise. The rain and the wind were gone, but soaked to the skin, Colton still shivered in the cool morning air. What just happened, he thought. How the hell did the preacher know Linda's name? Was it all a dream? I'm losing my damn mind. He stared at Linda's grave for a few moments, then suddenly realized, the only time I've not felt hollow since Linda died was when that little girl smiled at me with gratitude for saving her and her mother from Roger. Maybe a path to salvation lies in that direction. He smiled. A monster hunter who doesn't care if he lives or dies would be a very dangerous man. He leaned back against Linda's tombstone and waited for the sun to rise with his eyes closed, contemplating what would come next.
Remain calm and wait for further instructions.